Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Drunken Rancor. Today we will be breaking down Chapter 2 of Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. So as usual, sit down, pour yourself a glass of something good. My glass will be filled with Dalmore, a 12-year-old. I'm going Scottish today, laddie. Anyways, let's begin. Chapter 2 begins with Luke being called out to by a voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Looking around the desert of Tatooine, Luke was shocked when Obi-Wan appeared and told him that this would be the last time they would be meeting. It was at this point that it was revealed by Obi-Wan that he had contacted Luke through a dream, no longer having the ability to manifest in the world of the living. Now this differs from the new canon, in which Yoda appears in The Last Jedi decades after the time in which Heir to the Empire would eventually take place. Though the two are part of different timelines and have different rules, Obi-Wan states that he has lingered in the world of the living too long, and that it was time for him to move on to the afterlife. This seems to insinuate that so long as a Jedi is capable of being a Force ghost, they are separate from the afterlife. This also seems to show that it takes great strength in the Force to remain as a Force ghost, which makes Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade Skywalker appearing to Cad Skywalker nearly 100 years after his death, as well as the fact that Sith like Exar Kun managed to remain as Force ghosts for hundreds if not thousands of years, though he might be an exception since he sacrificed nearly the entire life force of a planet to keep himself that way, though this could also just be the fact that Obi-Wan was actually not very powerful for a Jedi. Well, he was a powerful Jedi, but when it came to raw Force power, Obi-Wan wasn't that strong. He was more of his skills and his wisdom made up for the fact that he wasn't much stronger than the average Jedi. Though, I like to think of it as the fact that Obi-Wan just has so much respect for the sanctity of life that instead of fighting it, he just decides to move on the minute he feels it pulling against him. The story then continues as Obi-Wan bids goodbye and tells Luke that he is not the last of the old Jedi, but the first of the new, pushing Luke towards his eventual goal of creating a new Jedi Order. Luke awakes to find himself on the planet of Coruscant in the Imperial Palace, the former home of Emperor Palpatine, and also the former location of the old Jedi Temple. Yes, the Emperor was so petty that he not only tore down the old Jedi Temple, he built his palace exactly where it used to stand. Heading out to the balcony, Luke looked out of the view of the palace towards the mountains of Coruscant. Yes, I said that, the mountains of Coruscant. That caught my attention too. That doesn't sound like the planet we see in the prequel trilogy or any of the animated series. This book is the first appearance of Coruscant, and while the main city is described as being massive, I don't think the idea of it being a city-covered planet was entirely there yet, though I may be wrong. It's been a while since I read the book, and I am writing this chapter by chapter without reading ahead, so it may say so in later chapters that it is completely covered. Similar books released around this time, Han and Kip Duran travel to the poles of Coruscant to go skiing, and there is also talk of Coruscant having an ocean, something else that is clearly not visible from any of the movies or shows when they show the planet from orbit. Though that does make me wonder what it would look like if a city like New York or Houston just continued going straight up the side of a mountain. I know structurally it would be hard, but I mean Star Wars has repulsor lifts and all kinds of crazy things. I'm sure they could build it. And with air speeders, the need for roads is non-existent. Getting back to the story, Luke is on the balcony of the Imperial Palace overlooking Coruscant when the door opens behind him. Luke reflexively reaches for his lightsaber before he realizes it is C-3PO. The two talk for a minute, with Luke stating that he misses Ben, and C-3PO stating that Ben always did treat him nicely. Which is kind of sad when you think about it, because Ben really didn't interact with 3PO that much. More so, it's just everyone else treated him like such a problem all the time, that the little bit of niceness that Ben shows C-3PO makes an impression on the droid. Also, remember that 3PO had his memory wiped after the events of Revenge of the Sith, meaning that he had no memory of his interaction with Obi-Wan throughout the Clone Wars. The concept of memory wipes is kind of messed up when you think about it. You're essentially killing it, considering the fact that most of the time the droid's memory is not backed up like 3PO's was in The Rise of Skywalker. This brings up a pretty big question of morality on whether or not a droid is sentient or not. From the personality and behavior, both 3PO and R2-D2 feel more like sentient beings than machines programmed to do tasks, which makes the idea of just wiping their memories if you don't like their behavior or are worried that they have info that you don't want getting out is a very dark concept. Especially because 3PO's memory was wiped in order to protect Luke and Leia from being discovered. But R2-D2 was left completely alone. And he was with 3PO all the time, meaning that 3PO was captured, then R2 was going to be captured as well, which would in turn have given whoever captured them the information that 3PO's mind was wiped to hide. 3PO should have just had the Ewoks eat Han and Luke and ruled Endor as a god. And when the Rise of Skywalker comes along and 3PO finally gets his moment, he sacrifices himself for his friends, for the sake of the galaxy. And then the impact of his sacrifice is taken away because R2 has a backup of his memory and everything is fine. In fact, it is even played off for laughs, with 3PO telling R2 that he was about to go on a mission, his memories of the mission not being backed up yet. Not that I wanted 3PO to die, but I do think it would have had much more of an impact if R2 couldn't have reversed it. I mean, just think about it. At the end of the movie, as everyone is celebrating, you have R2 roll up to 3PO, whistling in excitement. 3PO doesn't recognize him and introduces himself to his essential best friend. It would also have added effect of showing that sacrifices are needed to fight evil, and not all those sacrifices are simply death. You may survive the fight against evil, but you may not be the same you that started that fight. Anyway, back to the story. 3PO, speaking of Obi-Wan's kindness, helped Luke come to the realization that he should not be focusing on the big picture as much, and instead focus on the little people. That instead of being caught up in galactic politics of rebuilding the Republic, he should be focused on helping the civilians, helping the individual person on the street. Which is an interesting concept when you think about the fact that this book was written before the prequels, and considering some of the other contradictory information we will get later, I don't think George Lucas has the prequels completely worked out yet. Either that, or he at least hasn't told anyone yet, meaning that Timothy Zahn managed to guess one of the reasons why the Jedi fell, and had Luke already working to avoid it with his new Jedi Order, which is a problem that he will struggle with for a while. After all, it is nearly impossible to have what amounts to basically a priest police force that isn't heavily tied to the ruling government. Even though the Jedi do not try and force others to conform to the Force, with the exception of the Sith or other Dark Jedi cults, I'm pretty sure in real life, if you had what is essentially a Christian police force running around fighting crime while also fighting a Muslim police force, and while Muslim and Christianity are not opposites like Sith and Jedi, I'm just using two religions who have fought before in both the past and at times in the present, but with that little disclaimer out of the way, I'm pretty sure that a police force like that would probably clash with most modern governments. Well, that's as close as I want to get to politics in this podcast, so let's get back to the chapter. The story continues with 3PO noticing Luke's drink and asking him what it is. Luke reveals that it is something that Lando introduced him to, a very exotic drink known as hot chocolate, which when you think about it makes no sense because there are no cows in Star Wars, and while there is blue milk, it is never said whether or not it tastes like. So as far as we know, it could taste exactly like Dr. Pepper. And for everyone who's about to comment that you can make chocolate milk out of hot water, as someone who currently has dairy cattle in the pasture right outside his house, stop it, and go get yourself some good whole milk, or even better, if there's a local dairy, good raw milk, and make yourself some hot chocolate with it. And if you are lactose intolerant, I'm sorry that life hates you and cursed you with not being able to have the best hot chocolate. But moving on, Luke asked why 3PO had come out, in which the droid revealed that Leia had sent him out to check on Luke because he is in distress. This is used to reveal the fact that Leia has been training to become a Jedi, what will amount to be one of the slowest burning storylines in all of entertainment. Because it will be, if I'm remembering it right, close to possibly 50 books, if you're reading chronologically, before Leia truly becomes a Jedi. I'll be honest, I'm drunk right now, and I'm not sure the exact number, but it is fairly close to that. Moving on, it is revealed that Leia is also pregnant, and that she has been struggling with morning sickness. Slight spoiler, but don't worry. She isn't pregnant with Ben Solo, who will turn to the dark side and become Kylo Ren. She is pregnant with Jason Solo, though, who will turn to the dark side, become Darth Cassidy, and basically do the exact same as Kylo Ren. just with a much better story. She's also pregnant with his twin sister Jaina, who will manage to remain a Jedi. 3PO bid Luke goodbye and left, leaving him to his thoughts. Luke worried about the fact that the Imperial Palace was soaked in the dark side of the Force. Thinking back upon the cave at Dagobah, Luke ponders what gave the cave its dark side power. The cause of the cave's dark side power was a Benfashi dark Jedi who was killed in that location. And while Luke feared that the Emperor living in the palace had brought the dark side to it, he had to admit that he could not sense any lingering after effects of the dark side. The location of the Imperial Palace is later revealed to be the exact same place that the old Jedi Temple was built on, which is even later revealed to have been built upon the location of a massive dark side nexus. The Jedi Temple was originally built upon this dark side location because when it was discovered, it was decided that having an abundance of light side users living there would counteract the massive amount of dark side energy, which is a good idea, except for the fact that they raise children there. Because when you're training your space wizards in the Force that has a really corruptive dark side, you should definitely raise them on the location of an ancient well of the same dark side energy. Speaking of the failures of the old Jedi Order, Luke reaches out towards Leia in the Force and is distracted by the presence Leia's twins give off in the Force, described as being brilliant and bright, meaning Jedi are easily capable of sensing when a woman is pregnant with Force-sensitive children. So the Jedi Order definitely knew that Padme was pregnant, and most likely definitely suspected that Anakin was the father. I like to believe that the Council actually knew, and they were intentionally allowing Anakin to be with Padme, and were not confronting him about his kids because he was the chosen one. And if Anakin had just kept his cool, he would have been able to raise his children with Padme in peace. Which, in all honesty, had Anakin not gone evil, and Padme lived because she wasn't choked out and then died of sadness when she had to give birth, he would have definitely gone to war with the Jedi as soon as they realized Padme's kids were Force-sensitive, and tried to confiscate them from the Order. That would have been a pretty cool war to see. Anakin fighting the Jedi Order to protect his kids, while being evil for attachments, also fighting for a just and good cause. I guess not really evil for attachments, more like turn to the dark side for attachments to protect those he loves, but also probably not that dark. Anyways, Luke breaks connection with Leia before heading back to bed, and the story once again switches point of view. It switches point of view to Leia as she feels Luke's dark mood through the Force. Leia contemplates going down to speak with Luke but she is stopped by a stomach cramp. Getting a cup of milk to settle her stomach from her nightstand, which once again brings up the question from earlier, what animal produced the milk? Because I said earlier, there are no cows in space. So is she drinking Nerf milk? Reek milk? Giant space walrus from The Last Jedi? Rancor? I would not want to be a Rancor farmer. Back to the story, Leia hears footsteps coming towards the room, which causes her to jump back into bed, where she tries and fails to use the Force to turn off the lamp. Before she is able to get up and turn it off, again, Winter enters the room. Winter is a recurring character that will appear from here on out throughout the rest of Legends, though her appearance seems to differ from multiple different sources, from her appearing nearly identical to Leia and being mistaken for her, to having bright white hair. Though she probably just dyes it when she's pretending to be Leia, so just picture Carrie Fisher with white hair. And of course, if your name is Winter, then you have to have white hair. Also, on a side note, my crazy theory for the chapter is that Winter is actually the descendant of the Handmaiden from Knights of the Old Republic 2. Because they both have white hair, and this is Star Wars, so they have to be connected somehow. Plus, Winter is basically Leia's handmaiden, so the characters were probably influenced by each other. Anyway, Winter and Leia begin discussing Luke and the problems that the New Republic was facing, from struggling to set up a government body to the rumors of a tactical genius taking over what's left of the Imperial fleet. Meaning, despite his caution, the New Republic had at the very least heard of Thrawn, as well as Leia feeling guilt over the fact that helping the New Republic was keeping her and Han apart, not letting them see each other often. Which is something that I hope the new canon keeps. I would rather not have them make it so that Han just left because he's a scoundrel, and that's what scoundrels do. And if they have already explained it in the new canon about what happened between Han and Leia, Sorry, but I haven't really gotten into the Disney canon yet, so I haven't read the story. Winter and Leia finally decide to try and head back to bed before we switch scenes again, jumping halfway across the galaxy to where Han was on his mission, in what is probably the most important building in the entire galaxy, the Mos Eisley Cantina. I mean, seriously, the amount of times this cantina is used throughout all the works in Star Wars Legends is crazy. If something goes on Tatooine, there is probably a 50-50 chance that it goes on in this cantina. Also, the cantina is known as Mos Eisley Cantina. It doesn't have a name, it's just Mos Eisley Cantina, which makes it sound as if it is the only cantina in the town. A town which has the largest spaceport on the planet, and judging by the size of it in Luke and Ben overlooking it in A New Hope, is a fairly large city. While there are probably other cantinas in Mos Eisley, I like to think that the reason that this cantina is so popular is because it is literally the only cantina in all of Mos Eisley. Its bartender is also nuts. He's insane, because apparently after Han shot Greedo, Wuhar, the bartender, ground him up and made a drink out of him. Because apparently, if you grind up and ferment a Rodian, you get the greatest booze ever. Would you drink Rodian juice to get drunk? Sounds awful, but, you stick it in a barrel for a couple of years. I would try it. Can't be any worse than some of the other bottom shelf whiskeys I've tried. And I'm off topic again. Han is sitting in the canteen as he meets with Travis, who immediately insults him for going legit and marrying a princess. And my question to this is, if I'm a drug smuggler, and you gave me the option of a complete pardon and hooking up with Princess Leia, I am saying yes in a heartbeat. And if you wouldn't, let me know your reason why in the comments, so I can tell you you're wrong. But in the end, Travis seems skeptical about helping the New Republic, though Han does make a good point that most smugglers would like the idea of hauling freight without the need to worry about customs trying to arrest them, and with well-stocked and manned hangars for their repairs. Han then asks Travis who was in charge now that Jabba was dead, and he was informed that it was Talon Karrde, which surprised Han because, as far as he knows, Talon was a small fish. Though a lot of Talon's competition was taken out by the rebellion, from Zizor to Jabba, there are very few powerful crime lords left. Tiberzon was one of them. That's a battle of wits I'd like to see. Let me know if you'd like to see Tiberzon going up against Talon Karrde. I may make a versus video of that. And for anyone who doesn't know who Tiberzon is, he was the main character of Empire at War Forces of Corruption, a Star Wars real-time strategy game where you control the Zon Consortium, which you build up to the power until it rivals both the Empire and the Rebels during the time period. If you haven't played it before, I would highly recommend it. The game is 15 years old and just received an update from the amount of support it gets and the number of people who still play it. And the best part of it is the modding community. There are some massive mods that practically change the game into a modern, high-quality, real-time strategy. Back to the story, Travis leaves, making a comment about how Han's backup needs to do a better job blending in, referencing Wedge, who is doing a bad job at blending in at the bar. After Travis leaves, Han tells Chewie that it went about as well as he expected, that most smugglers would be wary of the New Republic with Admiral Akbar sitting on the main council. The Mon Calamari had always been hard on smugglers, even before the war and the rise of the Empire. Heading over to Wedge, Han told him that Travis noticed him, which only made him grin. It was then revealed that Wedge was supposed to be noticed, and it was here that Judder Page stepped forward. A very nondescript man and a former commando for the Rebel Alliance, Page points out that Travis hadn't brought any backup, meaning that he at least trusted Han not to shoot him. The group prepared to leave, with Han making the comment that they should swing by the Obraskas system first. This causes Wedge to mention the missing Element task force. Now this caught my attention. The fact that it is referred to as the Element task force implies that there are only Element on it. This does support Thrawn's earlier success, and explains how he was able to take out all the task force just by understanding how an Element thinks. Well, with that, we come to the end of Chapter 2 of Heir to the Empire. You can reach me at drunkenrancor on Twitter, or you can send me an email at drunkenrancor@gmail.com. Feel free to send me any questions about the chapter or any upcoming chapters you want me to discuss. And as always, raise your glass, and may the Force be with you. And as always, raise your glass, and may the Force be with you.